Okay. Well, welcome, blessings and greetings. And this is Catalina. And you are now entering the realm of sacred spiritual dimensions or sacred soul dimensions. This is my good friend over here. This is Glenn Steele. I'm glad to see you
Hi.
here. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No, thanks for inviting me, Kat. It's awesome.
This is cool. It's been a while. I met Glenn, geez, how many years ago? What, 3, maybe 4 years? Maybe.
That's 2018.
20, was it
Before, I
2019?
think it was even maybe before that. I think we may have met before that trip.
Well, maybe in another lifetime, but I thought it was because when I got back in touch with Hawk, it was like 2017.
Yeah, so it must have been
And it was,
2018 when I was out there.
yeah, I think that's when, the following year. But yeah, so it's been a while. I mean, we just got reconnected again here on Facebook, and Mr. Steele over here has got a lot of paranormal experiences that he was willing to share and tell us about. So first, before we go on, so tell us about you. What do you do? What's your interests?
Well, like you, I came over to the States, took my ordaining. So I'm actually a high priest. I've studied the occult and esoteric subjects for 40 years now. Practiced chaos magic for about 20 years. Studied shamanism for about 22 on and off.
Wow.
I didn't use it. The roots of chaos magic are actually in shamanism anyway. So that was just kind of natural progression. I've traveled a bit, lived in France, Germany, Holland, Belgium, Spain.
Wow.
And then spent almost a year out in the States in various trips with you guys, which I absolutely loved.
That was cool.
And then I started teaching, I think it was about 2007, 2006, 2007.
In the arts, what are you teaching?
I started with, it was mostly shamanic based stuff. I won't call it shamanism as such because people get touchy about that, but it was shamanic based. It was like the core teachings of shamanism folded in with all the other esoteric stuff I'd learned.
Interesting. So you kind of mixing it all together, and out comes mass knowledge and wisdom. And
it's like find your own path. Yeah, illumination, enlightenment.
Yeah, illumination, indeed. So, what actually got you started? I mean, in paranormal, getting interested in paranormal.
Weird experiences. As a youngster, I was a lone wolf. I was always in nature on my own. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Where I live, it's a very historic place. There's oak trees around here that are like 500 years old. Some go back to prehistoric times. There's one a few miles away. I won't say exactly where I am, but there's one a few miles away that was it's been there since prehistoric times. It's just a husk, but the thing is still standing, and they've dated that one at being about 1,500 years old. It's actually called the King's Oak.
Oh, wow. There's so much history. Did you say where you're from? I don't.
I was actually born in a little village in Windsor Forest, but my family all come out of London right after the war.
Okay.
Because of the overspill, there was no housing, so moving out into the Greenbelt gave better opportunities, better housing stuff, better lifestyle, really, guaranteed jobs. So my family moved out this way, but I already had my grandmother owned a farm a few miles away, which she ran single-handed.
Wow.
My grandfather was a grave digger, of all things.
That got you interested? Did you go with him, or?
No, he was a very sort of down to earth, when you're dead type character. My father was very superstitious. My mum was the one. My mum's family are very interesting. Their surname was Moors, but we know we had an ancestor came into Britain from Spain. But we believe they were Andalusian Moors.
Oh,
And
okay.
all the ladies on that side of the family are all mystical, but they never really used it. They all kind of feared it. And
Hmm. I
once,
bet.
once my, it was interesting. Once my dad died, my mum actually started picking up tarot cards and being a
So she's always been mystic, psychic
yeah, that
abilities.
yeah. All the girls on that side were like it. They're born naturally. I mean, my little cousin, she's a typical Moor. She looks Spanish. She's got olive skin, jet black hair, hazel eyes. We put her on a horse at about 3 years old, and by the time she was 6, she was doing gymkhana. I've got a love for birds of prey, uh,
Wow.
and as you know, like my travelling instincts, I'm very nomadic. I love to travel.
Mhm. Well, I know
Um,
that now. I didn't know that you were a gypsy out there. Wow.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's in the family.
It's in the blood.
But my dad's family were all Celts, so there's a strong Celtic bloodline there. I had Scottish and Irish great grandmothers,
Oh, I feel in
and
a, I
my
feel,
name and family name is obviously typically Scots. It's
oh,
a Scots name.
yeah, I feel an
Yeah,
affinity with the Scots and with the Irish big time. So I know those were past lives.
yeah. It's yeah, it's a very strong culture. It's kind of like, when we look at the Viking culture, we associate it with certain things, and the Native Americans with certain things. The Celts are pretty much seen as like a wild war band, but they were a lot more intricate than that in their craft work. Working with iron and metal, copper.
Yeah, they're amazing people. Well, the Vikings, where they, where were they from? Where did they situate themselves?
The Vikings tend to be around the kind of the main blood. The Halpole group is mainly up in the northeast, but the overall when I checked the genealogy, when I researched it, less than 20% of British people are actually Saxon, which is
Really?
amazing because England, the name England and all the traditions of England come from the Saxon line. But the majority of the UK, over 70 odd percent, are all Celtic blood.
Oh, cool.
So people think it's been watered down, but it hasn't really. But then again, you've got to kind of look. Britain's a like my ancestry. Britain's a seaport. It's the biggest seaport in the world,
Yeah.
and people have
Pe-
come here and gone, and it is a very historic place, but it can
Yeah.
be a very spooky place if you go to the right and wrong kind of places.
Yeah, you guys got the spookiest stuff over there. Here, yeah, there's places, but not like where you live. Oh my gosh, it's
No, I mean where I live now, I'm surrounded by burial mounds, hill forts,
oh,
um, chalk carvings in the hills. The local, if you follow shamanism, the obvious interesting point, the local deity here was a goddess called Epona, who's symbolised by a white horse.
Epona. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Epona. Yeah, I've heard of that.
and in the shamanic tradition, I believe the white horse was the spirit of journeying,
Oh,
like
okay.
shamanic journeying.
Okay.
Later, when we came into the Romano Celtic area, they then adopted. The Romans were quite funny. They never got rid of Epona. They kept her, but
Hmm.
they added Vesta to Epona. So the two
Oh,
local the two local deities here are Vesta, which is the goddess of hearth and home,
okay.
and Epona. And they couldn't really get rid of Epona because there's a huge, great big white horse chalked in the hills.
I was gonna say, I thought there was a big white horse somewhere on some mountain or something. Cliff.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there.
Who did that? You know?
They believe it was the Celts.
Okay.
But this,
Okay.
this area itself. I mean, I live in a forest now, or on the edge of a forest, which was part of Windsor Old Forest,
Okay.
which was huge. It used to be huge. You had like the Round Tower of Windsor Castle was built in 1066 by William the Conqueror, and that tower you could see back in those days the tower at the Tower of London, which had a round tower, which was also built in 1066. And the interesting part was they built them up on high hills. They're on very high hills, both places.
So, were they built on ley lines?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. So, did you go inside any of these Tell us about some experiences.
Okay, I've done the caves at Wiki Hole. I've climbed the mountains at Snowdon. I've done the Cairngorms, went up in the Cairngorms in Scotland, hiking, living up the mountains there. I lived for 10 days in the Alps in France. I did about another 10 days in the Black Forest in Germany. And then that was just after I came back from the States on my second or third trip.
Yeah.
It was like an in-between, and then back into the UK. But here, I've done the Hellfire Caves, a lot of castles, Odeon Castle in Kent, Windsor. I'm trying to think the other places I've been. Down on the moors in Devon, on the moors in Cornwall.
Of all those places you listed, which one is the most powerfully activated activity of paranormal experiences, or all of them? They all have that.
Yeah, they've all got their kind of edge to them. But I believe the Hellfire Caves was that's a bit spooky down there. It's
okay, what's that story? I've heard of that. Some kind of gathering cult.
Yeah. Benjamin Franklin was one of the boys there.
Really?
He was a member of that. It was called the Hellfire Club. It was I can't give you the dates because I really can't remember. But it was begun by a guy called Sir Francis Dashwood.
Yeah.
And they say that, they were going down the caves doing these ritualistic orgies and stuff like that. Now, when you go to the caves, the guides will play this down for all England.
Okay. I was gonna say, so was that the truth though? Is that what they were doing down there? Among other
things? No, there's weird things. There's actually a skeleton down there where somebody got walled in on purpose. And it's known to be a fairly kind of in Britain, it's known as a satanic monument. Really, it's like, but these caves are not natural. They chiseled them out into. It's a chalk hill. There's a lot of chalk hills around it, so they chiseled it out, and this is where Dashwood and his buddies used to go for their booze and orgies. But I do believe there was a cult activity going on there. That lady, Yvette Fielding, and that they did one of their vigils down there. And they were all crapping themselves. There was stones being thrown at them and all sorts. But it's quite eerie. It goes something, I think it's about 300 and something feet below ground. And it's not just one bit. It's got a centre chamber with other bits coming off of it.
Oh, wow.
But they did kill someone down there. There was the actual real story goes that there was a servant or prostitute or a barmaid from the local pub that's right near the pub's still there, right near the caves. Somebody got jealous and basically she'd done the dirty on this guy, so they took her down the caves and killed her.
Dang. So what they eventually found out that did they ever find her? Did they?
Oh yeah, it's you can Google it. It's actually written in the history. It's I can't remember her name. I think her name was Margaret someone or Sarah someone. It's a long way back, but I think the Dashwoods were around in about the 1600s, around about that time. And then obviously you got the obvious one, Brookwood Cemetery, which is where they filmed the opening scenes of The Omen.
Oh really? Oh, I saw that.
You know the one where he's at the funeral with all the crosses in a line and the American flag and all that?
Yeah.
Where he stood there holding his father's hand. That's Brookwood Cemetery. It's
did you walk that? Did you do an investigation there?
I've always had this thing. It's like I don't investigate them. I get drawn to these places, and then you kind of get there. It was like intuitive, I never went looking for anything.
They found you.
Yeah, and it's like when you get there, you start realizing, hang on, this is a bit strange. It doesn't feel right. Certain things feel out of place.
Yeah.
But Brookwood is huge. It covers miles, acres, absolute acres.
Oh, I can imagine some ancient gravestones or.
Yeah, it goes back to Victorian times when they had the Black Death. And the cemeteries in London were I'm sure they said it was the plague or the Black Death. The cemeteries in London were full, so they needed to get them out. So at the time, they decided that it would be a good idea to just start. They had these railway lines that were specifically like for funerals.
Oh wow. Oh, for during the Black Death.
Yeah, and it's I'm sure it was. Sure, it was around the plague or somewhere near there. I'm trying to think, the Great Fire of London ended the plague in 16 something. So this would have been later. No, it was later. It's Victorian times. So in
Okay.
London, you had poor sanitation. People were getting dysentery, stuff like that.
Yeah.
All the cemeteries in London were absolutely jam packed. They had nowhere to bury the dead. So they
Wow.
said, well, what we'll do, we'll take them out. We'll build a railway line out here, or part of it was existing. I can't remember what they called them. I think they called them the crematory trains or crematorium trains.
So they took them and they burned them, or they took them to a specific place and.
Yeah, they have a specific railway line where they would load them all up, a couple of hundred at a time, I guess, run them out there, then bury them. But Brookwood's it's an amazing place. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And then, but my biggest experiences have been on the hills, all the hills around it.
Really, the mounds or?
Yeah, definitely. They're
What did you?
shadows.
I'm sorry.
Shadows.
What?
Shadowy figures.
Oh, shadow figures.
Yeah. One of them. I was out with my partner at the time. He's like this 7 foot tall dude. Just followed us off this hill into the forest. Everywhere we went, you could feel his presence. We both felt it, so it wasn't. There's no way it was an illusion. But they say that these old mounds were cursed to stop anyone desecrating them. So if you go there with any kind of intention.
So he was probably following you guys just to make sure you weren't gonna mess anything up.
Yeah, they have guardians. I mean, they're kind of like guardians as well. I mean, this dude was like about 6, 7 foot. Well, I would say about 7 foot tall. He's way above me, and I'm 6 foot. And then when I was down in Avebury Stone Circle, I had another kind of visionary thing there. It was a whole parade of these guys in like grey cloaks with the guy in front had a pole with a lantern.
Lantern?
Yeah, had a lantern, and he was leading the procession. And they come down the avenue. There's a dead straight avenue goes into Avebury, and they came down there and into the stone circles and just vanished.
Wow,
which was a weird one. But I think the worst one was the place I was telling you about. Was the the place where I was a security guard. That was horrendous. It's an old hill they found. It goes back to at least 30 years before Christ. They found treasure there, dated to the Celtic period, gold coins.
Oh, that's what they were calling the hoard of coins or something?
Yeah, it's very rare, very rare.
Wow.
And this was found in one of the fields on this hill. This obviously gives you an idea of how big the hill actually is, this mound. After the Celts left, the Saxons went there and used it as farmland and had a settlement, used it as a rich farming land. And then it progressed to, there's a 15th century barn there. There's an old farmhouse there, an old manor house there. So it kind of progressed through the ages, you know.
So, but the energy stays no matter what happens.
Yeah, and the trouble is when you, I've always found with these places, when they get desecrated, they start getting active and nasty.
Yeah.
There's one hill. There's one hill about 4 or 5 miles away from here. You can't go up there. You just can't.
Why?
If you go up there, you'll start feeling sick. You'll start going dizzy. You'll come down, and you'll have a whole stream of bad luck, which you can never get rid of.
Wow. So cursed for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. And they found they excavated it in the 50s or 60s. They found a couple of bodies in there with earthenware jars, animal bones, coins, some jewelry. And that place is like renowned locally. You just don't go up there.
So you never did.
No, and weirdly enough, there's an old pub opposite, and there's a kind of, I know you don't get many of them in America, but a big roundabout, traffic roundabout. And there's forever accidents on that roundabout.
So I don't. Well, they can't take it apart or nothing because it needs to be there to get to one place to another.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something underneath that roundabout, or like the cemetery or something, or
Well, it's right near this hill, so the ley lines. I'm
maybe
trying to think which way they run. I studied them all locally. In my first place, when I had my little bed set, my apartment, it was on a point where two ley lines crossed, and you used to get like this fountain of energy coming out of the ground. It was beautiful.
Wow.
And I tracked those ley lines, and one of them actually run up to the Hellfire Caves.
Oh,
Another one ran, I think it went up into Cambridgeshire somewhere. But you know, these lines are long, and when you walk them,
Yeah.
obviously they're magnetic. You can actually feel them. But
that's a
getting
big
back
book.
to this original hill, it was
Mhm.
when they finished farming there, they developed it into a research centre for agricultural stuff, and they started building these kind of nuclear type office blocks and stuff like that on there. So I got this
Agriculture.
job, you know, at the Little Ends. I needed a job, so I took a job up there as a security guard.
Okay.
So I think I started late summer. It was first time I went on night shift. I was walking around with another guy who'd served in the Royal Air Force. Most of the guys on the team were ex-military, so they don't believe in ghosts. They believe when you're dead type stuff.
Oh, okay.
And as soon as I stepped out, you know, the first building we went in, I'm like, I don't like the feel of this place. And I thought, oh, it's just a building. You're not used to it. You know, it's a big space with lots of little dark corners and stuff. You'll get used to it. So, like, we're strolling around, and it's like, as the night goes on, it's progressively like getting worse and more daunting. And I'm thinking,
Oh, jeez.
something's not right. And I didn't know any of the history of this place back then. Nothing. So, like, we got to our second patrol, and I said to my supervisor, you know, I really don't like it here. And he's like, no, everyone's like this when they start. It's your imagination. I said, no, it's not.
Oh, come on, just your imagination. Yeah.
And he was a funny guy. He was actually Jamaican, and you know, he was saying, "Oh yeah, this stuff's all nonsense. I've seen it all in Jamaica with the Obeah and all this." He said, "It's all, you know, it's just rubbish. I don't believe in it." It's like, you know, and I'm like, "No, there's some vibes in here." So hey, we carried on, and it's like I lasted, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks, I think it was. And there was this big old manor house which was owned by a guy called Lord Braybrook.
Okay.
And I've actually got a picture of it. I'll send you it. It looks like the Munsters house. Right? It's that
wow.
bad. Yeah, it's that bad. You know?
Oh, God.
And you're like, it's got a huge, great big arch front door, solid oak with studs in the door, big
Massive
iron rings.
doors, yeah.
Had a cellar underneath, which we used to have to patrol. So, like, my supervisor going, yeah, when you do this building, you come in here, go down the cellar. Well, we went in this cellar, Cat, and it was like literally just wider than my shoulders. And you're looking in, facing this pitch black corridor. All we had was flashlights. It was about 18 feet long. Then you come to a dead end. You've got a door to the right. You have to unlock that, go in. And then you've got a wall in front of you, a wall to the right, so you've got to swing left, but you're in this confined space all the time. Yeah?
Oh, claustrophobia, big time.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's just horrible. The vibe down there was just unbelievable. So we're strolling along, and then all of a sudden, it's like the doors. Obviously, you're doing security. You're locking the doors behind you to make sure that you're not being followed and stuff.
Right.
So we got halfway down the next bit of this thing, and I just heard bang.
Oh.
So I've turned around and I said, someone's just come through that door. He said, well, how can they? It's locked. He said, don't be stupid. It's your imagination. I said, I'm telling you, it's not my imagination. I said, I just heard that door slam. Which door? I said, the one we just come through. It's impossible. Look. So he goes back to me with the flashlight, right, rattles the door. It's locked. So we go a bit further. He says, oh, you have to check in here. Well, when I look right, there's this tiny little room, which must have been like an old place where they kept the coal when they had furnaces.
Yeah.
And I looked in there and I thought, that really doesn't feel right. first impression I got was someone's been tortured in there. That was the first impression I got. Something really bad has happened in there.
Yeah.
Couldn't put my finger on it. Didn't say anything to him. So I'm getting nowhere with this guy. So we carried on. Then we go into the main house. Opened up the big oak doors. Go inside this lovely oak railed staircase or chestnut mahogany, whatever it was.
Wow.
Goes all the way round. Big balcony round to the foyer. Out the back, there was a big room that was like a library. They were using it as a library, and I went in there, and it's like, I don't like the feel of this room. Went down the corridors, I don't like the feel of this.
Oh, geez.
And as we're walking along, it's like, I can hear it upstairs. Boom, 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 bang. So it's like a wooden floor. So someone's obviously walking across the top of us. So he radios in, is there any lone workers in this building? So the control room, like, no, there's no one in there. I said, well, I just heard someone walking on that floor. And he's like, well, that's a bit strange. So did I. He said, but there can't be. So he took it as gospel. There can't be anyone there. And these instances, the experiences built up and up and up. The longer I stayed in that job, it got worse and worse. And that house, and there was an old coach house opposite, it was the same. But everywhere you went on that hill, it was like someone was always watching you. Right?
I hate that.
So anyway, we reached this point where I'm now qualified. I'm Big Bad Glenn's allowed to go and patrol on his own, yeah? So I go in the house and it's like, I've gone through the basement, not liking it very much, got in the house. And bearing in mind, back then I was into magic and stuff.
Yeah.
So for me to start getting like edgy about a place, I know there's something going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I go in there, I lock the front door, right? Check any lone workers. No lone workers. As soon as I get in there, boom, 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 crash went the door.
Jeez.
So I'm like, here we go. And it just went on and on. And then it came to a head. It got near Halloween. And me and this guy were out. And I can't remember what happened. One of the alarms went off. We had to go into the building together. So when the alarms go off, you have to go 2 men.
Yeah.
So we got in there, and while we're in there, we're going through, no lights on. We've still only got flashlights. And then the control room pings us. So on the radio, where are you? Oh, we're down by the fire escape in the manor house. Why? Well, the movement sensors are going off behind you. Well, they can't be. Well, they are, because they're these electronic sensors. So my supervisor's like, well, maybe it's the cobwebs, call the maintenance man out to come and clean the cobwebs.
The cobwebs.
And as he said it, the door upstairs has gone bang.
Bang.
And it's like a big fireball. It's a huge, they're like this thick, great big fireball.
Wow.
And it shook the building cap. Right? And he's still trying to tell me that this is all natural phenomena. And I'm like, really?
There's nobody there? Oh.
And it just, that night, it was horrendous. It just progressively got worse. Everywhere we went, footsteps above us. When we went upstairs, there was doors slamming below us.
Wow.
These sensors were still going off. And in the end, the control room actually said to us, look, there's someone following you through that building. Get out. So they told us to exit. So we came outside and we're looking back in. There's no lights. Oh, that was another thing. You used to patrol, switch all the lights off on your first patrol. When you go round on your second patrol, there'd be one light on somewhere in the building. Your supervisor's accusing you of missing it. You're like, I never missed anything, because we switch them off and then patrol the outer building, looking back in to make sure there's no lights on, right? I said, no, I came outside, I checked. He said, well, you must have left it on. I'm like, no. And just as we came outside, we went across to this old coach house. So we thought, right, we'll leave that, call the engineer out, check the alarms, blah, 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 usual crap. So we go in this coach house. So while we're in this coach house, there's a door behind us, a door in front of us. So we stood in the kind of centre of the building. Crash! This door goes. So Winston then looks at me and he said, what the hell's going on? I went, I don't know. And it just happened. Every building we went in, well, three out of it was 3 out of 5 buildings it happened in. We went into another one, which was like a modern office block. The control rooms on was someone following you through the building. The alarms are going off again.
Dang, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was horrible. These things kept getting triggered, and they're actual movement sensors, so they can't go off unless actually something is triggered it.
But something that's okay, you got nothing but whatever lost souls running around in there and residue, right? So,
Yeah. But at the
dang.
time, I didn't know. So I'm saying to this guy, what's going on here? And he said, well, I don't know, but if you're into like the history of places, go talk to the groundsman. He knows the entire history of the place. So now we get to the juicy bit. So I go on day patrol, driving around in the truck, and I see the groundsman, cutting the lawn. So I thought, oh, God, just go grab him. I pull the truck up, jump out. Can't remember what his name was now. He said, hey, Dick, it's like, supervisor was telling me that you can tell me the history of this place. Yeah, what do you want to know? I said, everything. And he just looked at me and he said, well, having a few experiences, are you? So I said, yeah, you could say that. He said, what, in the manor house? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, there was a servant who got pushed down the stairs in there, broke her neck, which was exactly where this fire door was.
Oh.
Then he says to me, oh, have a look down that way. Can you see that mound just at the other end of that field? I'm like, yeah. He said, that's a plague pit. So that's where they buried victims of the plague. Yeah, there's a little village nearby, and the plague wiped everyone out. The whole village. They burnt the old village down and built a new one. So there was a plague pit there. Then there was opposite was a sewage work for this place. One night the pumps broke. A worker went down there to fix the pumps in the dark, fell in the sewage and drowned.
Oh my God!
There was another little like pool pond type thing up the top. A young kid fell in there and drowned. And then I was saying to him, but what is it? And this was the guy. I was actually talking to the guy that found the treasure. Right?
Oh, okay.
And he said to me, yeah. He said, like, this place was occupied by the Celts, and it was, the Celts used it as a fire beacon, so they just had a big beacon on the hill. He said, then the Saxons come along, realised it was good agricultural land, they farmed it. Then in the 15th century, we got this barn put up, which was obviously the 1400s. And then it was owned by a guy called Joyliffe. I think his name is Edward Joyliffe. And it got the name Joyliffe's Hill. That's what it's now called. And it just progressed from there. And that was, I would say that was the worst place I have ever worked. It was just non-stop. It's like, it was that bad. You just couldn't ignore it. And then a few days on, I got swapped off of my team and put on day shift with a different team. So I'm talking to this old fella that had worked there. He'd been there 15 years. And I said to him, it was on a night. It was on a night shift, I think it was. I said to him, I don't like that manor house. He said, no, I got pushed down the stairs in there. I went, who by it? He said, no one. He said, I felt hands on my back. He said, and I got pushed down those stairs. Well, this was allegedly how this servant died.
Oh, wow.
The story I was told.
So the residue of that experience still just there. And if you happen to be in the right place at the wrong time.
Yeah, that's, I mean, even when you look at this house and you just think, wow, it looks beautiful. It's a beautiful building. But you look at it at night and the whole face of it just changes,
No.
And then I went to, I was working with a shaman over here. He took me down to an old druid's grove near Glastonbury. And it was a waning, I'll never forget, it was a waning moon. And he was doing a treatment on one of my friends. He said to me, oh, look, why don't you go down to Druid's Grove while you're waiting? So I said, yeah, okay. So he's like, just be careful down there tonight. No, the moon's waning. It gets a bit active.
Oh, no.
So I'm walking up there and I see this hollow in a tree. There's a spiral path goes up this hill. So I'm following the path that he showed me. Always enter it this way, Bless the two dryads on the way in. And as I'm looking at this hollow in the tree, it's kind of shimmering. And I'm looking at it thinking, what's that? And it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it came up to about 3 foot.
What?
And at that point, I'm like, I'm done.
Well, it could have been a little fairy bean or something.
It was actually, when I spoke to him, he said it was a dark elf. But the funny thing was, was the shamanism kicked in, because I dived into a load of brambles, and in this, right in the middle of these brambles, because they've all got thorns, so they protect you, right? I never got cut by the brambles, which was really weird. And when I've looked up, I'm actually underneath a whitethorn tree, which is, like they say, it's one of the fairy trees. Whitethorn and blackthorn are the big ones.
Okay.
And he said to me, "Yeah, the tree was protecting the tree spirit. It can't, the dark elves can't get near that tree." But it was this
really?
instinct to just run that way and stop there, Um,
Yeah.
And then, he's laughing. He said to me, "Look, it wouldn't hurt you." He said, "What it was actually doing was investigating you. He's come out to see who you are."
Okay. And you said, "I'm out."
Yeah, I had a weird one. I dreamt when I was working with him on his course. I dreamt one night. I thought it was a dream, but I actually believe now it was an astral projection. I actually went there and saw Merlin on that hill in this kind of blue that's on these name tags here. But it was electric.
Yeah.
And I went down to see the shaman in the morning. He just looked at me and went, "Oh, we met Merlin last night, did you?" And he knew.
So he pops up whenever
Certain people, he's kind of selective, but certain people that are really, really into the sort of magical side of shamanism more than the healing side.
Yeah.
And he just pops up. He just shows you it's, well, I'm real.
He's like, "Hey, hello." Hey,
but they're the sort of most memorable ones I've ever had.
Yeah. So other than shadow figures, and I mean, did you hear voices when you're walking around, or muttering, or whispering, or?
Not in those places, but I've heard in the forest around here. I've heard screams, weird noises that you just can't relate to animals.
Okay.
The dogs. It's quite funny. We've got 3 houses apart from the one next door this side. We've all got dogs, and those dogs go out there to the back fence right where that forest is, and they start. They just start
because they see him coming, whatever.
But there's Izzy's had a few experiences out there, and both my boys have said they've seen like people on the track that weren't there. Ashley saw someone leap out from behind a tree in front of him, scared the living daylights out of him. And it must have been real, because he come home and he was like white as the driven snow, and panicked.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Jeez. But no, there's a few places here I'd like to visit. One's called Borley Rectory, which is supposed to be the most haunted place in Britain.
Borley Rectory?
Borley Rectory.
Borley Rectory.
It's Borley.
Borley.
Yeah, Borley. It's
Rectory. So that was that
this place.
Is that a Catholic building?
I believe it was. Yeah. I can't remember the entire story of how that one goes. I think they said there was a serious poltergeist activity there, and I'm pretty sure it got so bad that they knocked it down. Dang,
that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and I had a couple of friends over here that were a few people when I was in a loose knit chaos group, and they'd actually gone up to Aleister Crowley's house in Scotland, and the high priestess was actually doing. She completed the rituals up there that Crowley failed to finish.
That sounds familiar. I think I just read something about him like a couple of months ago on that piece right there.
Yeah, it was weird. A couple of weeks after she finished these rites, the place burnt down. It caught fire and burnt down.
So she was responsible for that? She did something wrong, or?
No, it wasn't her. She was trying to close down what he'd started. He left a lot of unfinished stuff up there, which was
not good.
Like portals wide open and stuff like that.
So they got shut. They shut that place down. Whoever decided it was not gonna. That probably is what. Any ideas?
One of the happier ones I can think of, which was actually quite a jolly trip. There's a place called Coombe Abbey, which is up near Coventry. It's further up north. I stayed there And I thought, oh, it's called Coombe Abbey Hotel. I was actually driving those days. I took a bunch of people up there for a visit. And when it said Coombe Abbey Hotel, I'm looking for this kind of ultra modern place, you know. And then we go up this road way, way out into the sticks. And I turn in there, and then I realise it is an old abbey that's been converted into a hotel.
Oh,
So when you go in the foyer, there's no proper seats. It's like church pews and stuff like that. It's absolutely brilliant. Right?
okay.
So like, I get talking to this receptionist, and I'm like, "Hey, that's a bit strange." She's like, "What?" I said, like, you've got a grave in the hallway.
A
So it's
grave
like
in the hallway?
big, yeah, you know, like the tomb of the unknown soldier. There's
Oh,
a tomb like that in this building, right, with
oh, come on.
an iron fence around it. And I noticed that there's a candle burning on this tomb. So I'm saying to her,
No, he was present then.
yeah, it's like, what's with all the witchcraft? She's like, she's laughing.
With all the witchcraft.
I said, what's with all the witchcraft over there? So she said, oh no, she said, we have to do that to keep him sweet. And it was an old monk. It was actually a monk.
Oh,
And she said,
no.
seriously, she said, if you don't light that candle, she said, if that candle's not kept lit, she said, he will come out of there and cause absolute havoc in this place.
What? He must have been wicked. Was that
I
like
think I think maybe he felt that the same thing again. You know, maybe the place was desecrated, but she was awesome. She's only a young girl, but she knew the place like the back of her hand. She said, hang on, let me get someone to replace me. I'll take you round.
okay.
So anyway, she got someone to stand in, took me upstairs. We're walking through these corridors. She said, you know, and she had the keys for the room. She said, hey, look at this. You know, see what you think of this. Because I was telling her I love history. I've got an interest in witchcraft and stuff. So she said, oh, you'll love this room. It's the honeymoon suite.
Okay.
So yeah, she's opened this door, cat. I've never seen anything like it. And there's like a 4-poster bed, right, where you go up on steps. So it's got like 2 steps, 3 sides around. So you climb up the steps to get into the bed. There's a huge cast iron bath at the end of the bed that you can just get out of bed and get in the bath.
Oh, wow. He had it made.
Stained glass windows, like the LED light windows.
Yeah.
Wall-to-wall carpet, huge like old medieval curtains.
Yeah.
And I just stood there and I'm like, wow.
That's
And
history.
she said, guess what? So what? She said, this place. She said, this room is like, this hasn't been touched since we bought the Abbey. She said, the only
What?
thing we did was moved the bath. She said, but everything else is the same.
The way that they left it.
Yeah, they just left it. And she said, this is why the monk gets a bit peed off, because we keep changing everything round. So
Oh, he don't
said,
like that.
yeah, and the hotel manager took it that seriously. He said, you know, it's like, well, we can't keep messing with these rooms. So they kept as many as they could in the original state.
Yeah. So that
But
he
it was the
wouldn't get
same
all.
thing, didn't it? You know,
Huh?
you walking around, it was the same thing there. I was walking through these corridors at night. You know, we stayed over for about 2 days. And it's got these grounds with a arboretum and all of that, and a little lake and all that stuff. I'm walking through these corridors. It's like, there's a nun behind me. I can feel it.
With a ruler in her hand.
No, it was like she was older than that, but she had that kind of, you know, those kind of French bonnets that come out the side.
Oh, yeah.
She had one of those type hats, and you know, I turn around and it's like you can see this shimmering figure behind me, and I'm like, whoa, you know.
Wow. So she was aware you were there, and she was like,
Yeah, I guess she, but then she just kind of, I don't know how to explain it. I wouldn't say she just disappeared.
Yeah.
It was more like she was like a hazy figure anyway, but just became more hazy and then just vanished. Almost like a fog, like you was looking at someone in a mist or a fog.
Oh, wow. So she was able to slip through the dimensions or see what's going on.
Totally. But
So,
you know,
yeah.
you get this kind of idea. You know, I think when you've had a few experiences like that, you get this idea of, hang on, this is these people's home.
Yes. And so, yeah, looking up here.
Yeah, and as you know, once you've studied some shamanism, it's like, you know, there's a strong element of respect.
Yes, definitely.
So I just I ordered a sandwich, I think, from room service. In fact, I ordered 2, and a drink for myself and a cup of tea. I just waited till the waiter had gone, and then put the sandwich, the cup of tea outside for the nun.
This is for you, my dear.
Yeah, it's like, take it,
That's
leave it.
respectful, yeah. And so,
But even with the monk, when I went back downstairs in the morning, it's like kiss your hand, touch the grave, stand there. I was actually talking to the
respectful.
monk that was dead. Yeah, just stood there talking to him. And it's like, hey, mean you no trouble, mean you no harm.
Yeah, you have to be respectful, and then they won't harass you so much. So there's other guys that are bebopping in and out of hallways and all that. Other than the first place you were talking about, that's like old residue from God, the lifetimes prior.
Yeah, you're talking what? Well, it started 30 BC, so 30 years before Christ, and it's carried on ever since.
That's amazing. Can you imagine? I know, yeah, you can, because you were there. So the energy that you were feeling, it all scared you, but there had to have been some that were just like casually watching, observing, like, what are you doing?
You got that. Yeah, there was different areas of the place. You find where the youngster drowned. You found there was a very playful energy up there. It'd be silly things like you'd be walking along and a stone would just go across the front of you and things like that. That idea of wanting to play, and I just used to walk past and go, "Hey, how you doing?" Just carry on.
Sure.
But the groundsman said to me, you're better off not going up there. It's all around that place was just such weird energies, and it's in the house. I got the idea that it was trying to invoke terror. It was actually trying to put you into a state of terror
to keep you out, to keep you from returning,
just get you away from the house.
But also, they drain your energy too. If they can get you scared enough, they can drain your energy.
Yeah, we had a lot of that. A lot of guys up there used to go through there and say, God, I'm tired tonight. They'd be happy as Larry when they're in the control room, but 5 minutes in this house. But it was very, it's like you said, you could feel this residue of like people sitting in big armchairs in a smoking room and stuff like that, the library and servants. That was the one I used to get a lot in there, was servants wandering backwards and forwards along those corridors. So when this guy said, one of the servants fell down the stairs or got pushed down the stairs, whatever the case was, I was like, okay, that's starting to add up,
Yeah. So the memory of any event lingers in the home. It makes its imprint, and it's.
I think it's in the brickwork. I think it's actually brickwork as well. I lived with a sorceress way back. It was early 90s, and she used to touch. She would touch building walls and could read them.
Yeah,
it was amazing. It's amazing to watch her do it. Yeah,
that's a gift. That's a gift.
And a Gothic girl I knew years ago used to wander through graveyards and do the same thing. She'd be run her hand across the stone graves and she'd be reading them. She was a really nice lady. Oh, this man was a complete hostage.
So she had that's a gift of mediumship.
Yeah, she was a very strange girl. Very, very strange girl. Which is what I found attractive about her, to be honest.
That's honest.
It's like, not only have we got someone pretty, it's someone who wants to hang out in graveyards. Perfect.
Yeah, okay.
But no, it was joking aside. She, like you said, she had a great gift. Whether or not she ever used it, I don't know.
It sounds like she used it for her own, not necessarily entertainment, but to understand, perhaps.
Yeah, she had this kind of, I wouldn't call it curiosity. It wasn't as simple as that. She was
a passion.
It's like you said, you really got this idea that when she was doing this, she was actually hitting some point of either gnosis or communication. But something was going on in her. And you could always tell when it was happening because her pupils used to dilate.
Just watch. Makes sense. I mean, I know I could go to any of these places and I would feel bombarded by all the images. I mean, I'm empathic, but I understand that it's not necessarily my stuff that I'm feeling, but it's whoever else is around me or the place itself. So I know Well, that's gnosis too. Right? You know it's
But I think, in the Hellfire Club as well, when you're descending, I mean, you're going down a long way, and it's a very narrow chamber. If you've got people coming up as you're going down, you kind of have to shift sideways in most places. And well, the actual opening is wide, but the deeper you go, the more narrow it gets. And down there, once you get halfway down, you really start picking up this kind of presence. That was the only one of that most haunted series where I actually felt that's real, because I've been down there, I've felt it myself. It's like, and she was naming who they were and this, that, and the other. Um, but man, that
creepy.
place, yeah,
That's
that place
creepy.
is very strange.
Did you go into any um, like sanitariums?
No, over here they're kind of the old Victorian ones are kind of, they've all gone. There's only one left as far as I know.
Were they
Which
taken
is,
down?
yeah, they got rid of them. I don't know why, or they turned them into other things. Strangely enough, the the Imperial War Museum in London used to be an asylum.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it figures, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, that's okay. Makes sense.
But
That
I don't know. I mean, really, when I was younger, I used to explore like construction sites. That was my thing. I was either on a building site climbing stuff or out in the fields with the old oak trees and stuff. But um, there's a lane in my hometown. It's like a little country lane where they used to have a gallows. Because in this area there was highwaymen as well. There's a history of highwaymen, and you go down where this gallows was, and that lane that's another one. It feels just like that house, but worse because you're outside.
oh, well, yeah, and then you think about the energy that's expended during
Yeah,
the hangings and whatever, the people watching and the crazy. Oh god, that
yeah.
would
Because
that would
I
be
think
heavy.
they used to hang them up in an oak tree, and that oak tree is still there. It's like if you walk down that lane. One day, next time I'm over there, I'll go take. I think I might have a picture somewhere, but I'll go take a picture for you and send you.
Okay,
They call it the hanging tree.
okay, and that's where's that at?
It's about 35 miles west of London, but this
Okay,
was all old forest. It was all old, there's loads of old tracks through the forest.
wow,
Up the road, there's a place called Star Hill. There's another road in there, like an old gravel track called the Devil's Highway.
I love
Um,
it. I'm sure there's plenty of reasons for that.
yeah, it's an old Roman road. It's actually Star Hill
Oh,
and all that. It was Roman tracks, but they called it. I can't remember why they called it the Devil's Highway. I think it was because of the highwaymen. Because when they used to bring the old horse and coach down there, the highwaymen would be hiding in the heath and the bushes, and they'd just come out with the old pistols and stand and deliver.
rip them off and be on
Yeah.
their way. Yeah, some ruthlessness. Um, what about you guys get a lot of UFO sightings out there and abductions and such, or what?
Um, not a great deal. I mean, it's like I don't know about that one. I've kind of looked at the night sky and seen a few things I just couldn't explain.
Yeah.
Um, One night I was out with a friend of mine. Funny enough, it was near near the lane that goes to the hanging tree,
Okay.
and we saw this kind of gold cigar-shaped thing in the sky. And he was in the military, so I'm looking at this thing and I'm saying, "So, hey, Andy, what's that?" And he's like, "I don't know." I said, "Do you think it's a satellite?" Because over here it's like clear night, you can track the satellites. He's like, "No, it's not a satellite." I said, "Do you think it's the space station?" "No, the space station's not gold." And this thing's just slowly moving towards us. Looked like a tablet somebody's
Oh,
built.
Tic Tac.
Yeah, and it got to like I'd say from our vision about 20 feet away, and this thing just went vroom, gone.
You think I'm a space station now?
Yeah, and we're looking at each other, and he's like, "Where the hell did that just go?" And I'm like, "I don't know." He went, "Well, what was it?" "I don't know."
It's a
Until
ship.
I think so. I think so. I think
Yeah.
it's the only logical explanation.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes out here, I see a few things like hovering around that look a bit abnormal. Um,
Okay, yeah.
but
Let's
I
see.
don't know. I do believe, my beliefs go back. I do believe in the star people and all of that kind of ancestry, with
Sure. Yeah.
humanity and
Yeah.
forbidden archaeology, forbidden history, all that stuff. Um, but abductions,
Nobody talks about
I've
it
never met anybody that's openly admitted to it.
openly.
But I
Exactly.
think there must be people around that have had those kind of things go on.
I forget. There was a forest somewhere in the UK where there was a ship that came down really close to some kind of a military base or something.
Yeah.
It was something
Rem,
Shire, uh,
I can't remember that. I want
some
to say Remenham, but it's not
some
Remenham.
kind of a
It's
something
with an R.
Shire
Yeah,
forest something.
it'll come to me. It's actually a US Air Force base. It's
Oh,
actually a
what's
United States Air Force base.
oh, okay. What about cryptids? Is
About what?
cryptids like we have Sasquatch out here big time, and but then there's a chupacabra. But what about they? I've always heard these different stories about vampires and werewolves connected to your land over there.
Oh my God! Yeah, there's I can't remember what's the name of that cemetery in London. It's huge. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It's in North London, something Gate Cemetery. They say
What?
there is an actual vampire in there.
Okay. So how do they know that? Did he have they dig
People have
him up?
seen it. No, people have seen it. It's like this place is like a magnet for goths. The goths that go there.
Yes. Yeah. That's
Um,
why that was
well,
wondering.
that was another one I've done was Whitby Abbey, where Bram Stoker wrote Dracula. I've done
Oh
that one as
God.
well.
Oh yeah.
I just wish. Oh God, that name of that place is on the tip of my tongue.
Brookshire.
Highgate Cemetery. That's the one.
Oh, Highgate.
Yeah, that's in the history books. You see it, the Vampire of Highgate Cemetery, and there's a lot of famous people buried in there.
So this vampire, he was walking around, or he's buried there somewhere.
No, he walks around in there. He's been seen by people that weren't into the gothic scene as well. He's like chased them out of the cemetery, scared them off to death.
Oh, so that's could be an ancient one or somebody that's thinks they're pretending to be a vampire or wishing they could be or what.
No, I actually think it's real. I do think it's real.
So he's an ancient one walking around still.
Yeah, years ago, I had a girlfriend. Her dad was he was a sergeant major in the army. Funny enough, and we went. He took us up. He was Scots. He took us up to Scotland on holiday. This was when I was way back at school, and he said to me, "Oh, I'll take you to see something interesting tomorrow." So I'm thinking, great, he's going to take me to an Air Force base or something really lively and all that. So anyway, he takes us to this place. I can't even remember the name of the town. I'm sure it was in Dundee somewhere, or just outside of Dundee. And he stood in front of this building. He says to me, "What do you make of that?" And it was this really old building, though, again, with the lead light windows and all that. And there's this crystal clear claw mark all through the brickwork, all down the glass.
What?
And I'm like,
What?
what did that? And he said, well, the story is it was actually a werewolf. He said, and nobody's ever been able to disprove the story because they've had specialists out there and they're saying that these claw marks don't match any animal that they know of.
And this was at what place?
It's in Scotland. I can't remember exactly which town it was. Excuse me.
Scotland. Okay.
But it was up near Dundee somewhere. But it's got literally claw marks right down the glass. And when you're stood there, you can almost hear the scratch.
Oh God! Like nails on chalkboard.
Yeah, it's an inn. I remember now. It's an old inn. It's an inn or an old hotel. And he said, the people going there, he said it scares the crap out of them. And there was a Scottish thing that every certain time of the year, this thing scratched. They can hear the noise of the glass scratching
Oh, God.
when they're in the pub having a drink. You know, just it's.
I think I have to go
But
back.
he was real funny because he like again he was a soldier. They don't really believe in stuff like that. And I said to him, "What do you think?"
That he
And
was
he
a
said,
soldier? Go ahead.
"Oh, excuse me, cat.
That's all right. That's all right.
Let me just switch this off. It's going to ring on my Facebook anyway." But
No, it's all right.
yeah, he was a soldier, and generally they don't believe in stuff like that. And I said to him, "Well, what do you think it was?" And he said, "I don't know."
So this werewolf was a soldier? Is that what you said?
No, I was up there with a soldier.
Oh,
But, you know, this guy was very down to earth. You know, he'd been trained in mountain rescue. He'd worked on one of the radar stations up in the Outer Hebrides. So he was a real down to earth guy, and he's not the sort of guy you would expect to stand there and say, "Well, I don't know, so it must have been a werewolf," because nobody can prove any different.
That's a trip.
And then once I got to know him better, he kind of started telling me about all these weird things that go on in Scotland and the spirits that they believe in up there, like harpies, brownies, all those sort of things.
Wait a minute. So what is a harpy?
I believe it's like a siren, like a water spirit that they drown people, basically, if I remember rightly.
Why did they do
the
it?
Brownie is like I think the way I need to go with this one is kind of clear up the Celtic view of like the Fae and fairies.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see them as being cute little things. They're not. They're very mischievous. They'll steal your soul. They'll steal your children.
Oh,
You know, they're not pretty little butterfly wings. They're
yeah, why do they?
3 foot horrific monsters. You know.
I've seen pictures, and because I cruise around the internet all the time looking at different things, and then I've seen pictures of fairies that don't look like these little pretty little things floating around.
Yeah, they're not. They're not at all.
So why do they make them? Why do they depict them as being these little sweet things? That's just what keep you off.
No, it's not exactly a gimmick.
Yeah.
If you actually do one of the if you can actually work like that Celtic line or the Avalonian line, when you do the initiations into the fairy realm, when I did mine, I got snatched. I was actually dead for 4 minutes.
What?
I was
grabbed you?
Yeah, snatcher. They called them glamours. The beauty of this place. I think you'll love this one, Cal. I'll take this one in depth for you and your viewers because it is beautiful.
Okay.
You do get that kind of fade that you're talking about, right? This kind of mystical procession of the fairy princess with the cone hat and the silk scarf and all of that. Now, I think that is part of it. I do believe that's a part of it. Are they like flowers and spirits of flowers and stuff like that? No, I don't think so. They live in their own realm. It's like a hidden realm, and within that you've got what they call the Tuatha, which are like They wear like the traditional Welsh hats with the buckle on the front and all of that, like a sort of stovepipe hat.
Okay.
They're male figures, but they're little wizards. They're basically like little wizards, and when you do your initiation, they're the ones that decide if your karma is clean enough for you to be able to carry the rod, the sword, the shield, the cup. So that's like the grail, right? It's like the grail. Your karma's got to be fairly clean before they will allow you to carry the magical weapons. So as I'm doing this thing, the guy's like drum me down there, and he's like, "What can you see?" He's like, the first lot of Fae, they've got 4 cities. There's 4 cities. Names of them I can't remember. But the first lot of Fae take your clothes and burn them, right? So they leave you vulnerable and naked in their realm. The second lot of Fae give you new clothes, I think it was.
after they burned the other ones.
No, sorry. The first lot take your clothes and burn them, and then give you a new image. They give you new
Oh,
clothes woven of
okay.
silk and stuff, like natural fibers. I remember. Um, I can't remember what the next one was. Then you do the ferryman and then the crystal beings. So you meet all of those in this thing, and then once you do that, the Fae have this celebration because you've just become like, for want of a better word, you've become a wizard, a proper wizard or a proper witch or whatever you, whichever sex you are, determines how they view you, I guess.
Huh.
And you get this big parade, and they've got the big hunting horns, and they're blowing on like cow horns and stuff like that. And it's all very pretty, and it's all very electric colours, and then you get this kind of overwhelming sense of ecstasy. The light there is not like the light here, right? It's very different. And the next thing, you just boom, and I can hear this shaman say to me, come on, Glenn, it's time to come back. Time to come back. I'm like, no, I'm not coming back. And he's like, Glenn, you've got to come back now. It's like, no, I'm not coming back. And I'm standing there looking at this fairy princess who's just the most glamorous little thing you've ever seen in your life. But then when she draws closer, you realise they're not actually this big. She's actually the size of a human. And it's like talking to a proper princess, and it's like, whoa, and you're going deeper and deeper. And when he eventually pulled me out, he said to me, I had to put you on circular breathing. Because I knew I'd stopped breathing. I'd held my breath. I was deliberately holding my breath, and it stopped. And he said, I had to punch you into circular breathing. I'm like, why? He said, mate, he said, you've been dead for 4 minutes on that.
Oh, my God.
Your heartbeat, he said, was down to about 1 beat a minute.
Dang. So they enchant you.
Yeah, they just snatch it. Just like, I will have this one.
Take you in, and then they enchant you and keep you to stay. So what if a human ends up there willingly and knowingly, like you said, you didn't want to come back, then they have cast their own little spell or whatever to keep you enchanted, to keep you there. So what is the intention to keep you there with them? They can drain your energy the whole time you're there until
No, I don't think that particular kind of, let's call them a brand, that particular brand of fairies they weren't so bad. They kind of like, oh well, we know you've been initiated, you can live in the magical kingdom with us. It's kind of that type of energy, this celebration and this party. It's kind of like a rave for fairies. It's all the things you'd expect: rainbow sparkles, pretty lights, glittery air, all of that. Yeah. You see the Twaffer coming along with their procession, with their lanterns and their shields and all that kind of stuff. And then you get the fairies, which are like the nature spirits, like the tree spirits and stuff like that. And they're just really ugly. That's the only way I could describe it. They are really hideous looking things. But they will also be in this procession. And you get like the big dryads and, the little shrub type ones.
I think of the what's his face? The guy with the glasses, the kid, and then magic and the tower of the tower, the rings of power. What is it?
Oh, yeah.
The trees are walking and they're fighting against a big.
It is like that. I mean, I'd never read Lord of the Rings, so I didn't know. But it is like that. You do the divas and dryads look like that, but the rest of the tree spirits are kind of, they can be any size, from kind of 3 foot to 8 foot. They expand and contract. They can grow bigger, smaller. All sorts of weird stuff goes on there. And I'm sure anyone who's watching this going, this guy's cuckoo. He's been smoking all the wrong stuff all his life. But it's not the case. It's about, like you said, gnosis and altered states. Hypnotic drumming can open you up to all manner of things. And I believe that these things are in our far-reaching memory. They're part of our culture. They're part of who we are. They're things that we've now forgotten and no longer teach. Yeah, but the fairy tradition and the Arthurian tradition really got glamorized sort of in the Renaissance era, when it got kind of altered by the French. When it reached France, it became more these romantic type novels, which is where you get and the Victorian era. I think the flower fairies, that's where it comes from, was artists and storybooks.
Yeah.
Illustrations back in Victorian days. But if you go back to the Celtic stream, the original faith, they're pretty horrendous things.
So, I mean, I've seen pictures here and there on the internet of people coming across fairy graves, and there's this little, they're dry, they're dead, whatever, but they look like little fairy people. You get the
Could well be.
wings, and I'm going, what? So, and then, there's no way that, because they were like, you could tell they were really old, and somebody came across the body, the little body, and
Yeah.
so they exist between worlds, or they can come through like a portal and then maybe get stuck and unfortunately die or something on this realm.
Yeah, I think the energy here for them is, too dense. And
They can't handle
from
it.
my experience in the fairy realm, this place for them would be way too polluted.
Yeah. All the
Not
noise
the
and
type,
everything else.
yeah, not the type of spirits that could survive the kind of density that we live in.
Yeah,
But I do
yes.
believe that they kind of shielded themselves. I do believe there was a time where they were hunted, like the fall of Atlantis and the Anunnaki and all of those type of histories come into play. I think it was a measure of self-defense and preservation.
Yeah.
Because we became, look at that era, we became less spiritual and more dense.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is the third dimension, and we're supposed to be rising up into the fifth and so on. So to my understanding, this is the fourth. We're in the fourth dimension. Hawk has said, and we're striving to get to ascend into fifth. But then the fifth dimension is you're more energy than you are. You're not solid, really.
Yeah, that's more the light body, isn't it? Sort of that kind of.
Yeah. So, interesting. Yeah. Well, that's been fun. I know you had a lot more stories too.
Well, I hope I haven't waffled too much, but it's a bit hard to shorten experiences like that down. It is what it is, and I kind of feel if you don't explain it properly, people really would get the wrong idea. And
yeah, I mean,
I'm a pretty level-headed guy. I've got a family, it's 2 dogs, a garden. I do things that normal people do, but it's just I think sometimes, like you said, you come from a bloodline or a family where you're kind of open to that kind of thing,
Yeah,
and it won't let you rest. It won't let you walk away. I've tried loads of times to walk away from it, but something always happens again, and you go.
Yeah, because you got magic in your blood. You're.
I think so.
Yeah, you're magical and mystical the whole bit. You're not stuck in a program, that they try to program.
No, I find it hard to live in that world. I'll be totally honest. I can't do the rat wheel. I can't do the social expectation stuff. It's like I think when I came over to you guys, that's where I really learned to be a free spirit. They say America's the land of the free. Well, if you go there with the right attitude, it really is.
Well, yeah, but then I've heard that a lot of people, the Europeans, think that we're evil, and they judge us by whatever idiots that are in office. Did I say that?
Yeah. Well, I tend to argue with those people. There's a really good get out clause for anyone that wants to trip those people up. Just turn around to them and say, have you ever lived with an American family? That one gets them every time. Because they're judging you by the politics of the White House.
Right.
And when I say, well, the Americans I know, none of them voted for Trump. None of them are stuck up. None of them are egotistical. None of them you just break the mold. So, these are real family loving, let's go have fun, hard-working, industrious people. And it's true. That is the truth of what I saw in the States,
live and let live.
Yeah, you guys work so damn hard compared to other countries.
But not everybody thinks that way. There's a lot of negativity here, just as all globally.
Yeah, but, we get it here, you British, you're slave traders. It's like, really, my ancestors had nothing to do. In fact, my ancestor probably came here as a slave, if anything.
Yeah. So
we don't know. It's like it's wrong. I think it's wrong to paint that picture on anybody. You know,
Uh,
it's just not right, Kat, is it? It's not honest. It's not an honest
no,
opinion.
it's not. And it's like people pointing fingers at others when they should be looking in the mirror. And, like,
Yeah,
they see something they don't like about you. It's a reflection of their own self, their
yeah,
own
totally, totally.
whatever's. So it's like, yeah, but yeah, I did my share of my own research. I always have since I was 13 because I had experience in a lot of uh, spirits and ghosts and whatever that were messing with me. So at the age of 13 is when my gifts started popping, started coming in. And man, there was many times it just scared me big time because I didn't understand what's going on. And I would tell my mom, "Hey, this is what happened to me last night," and she'd listen. And, oh, it's okay. You're just having a bad dream. It's
Excuse me.
it's 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 all right. So, oh yeah, it's but and since then I've always been interested in the paranormal because things are happening to me, and I had to find out and discover what's going on. What is this? And we were told as kids, oh, there's ghosts and and all these things. And
So
um,
can I ask, what's your view on these like investigations? I mean, I'm presuming that you would go into it like myself with an open mind and kind of, for want of a better word, psychic or intuitive abilities and read it by the feeling of the energy, yeah, rather
oh,
than
definitely.
just
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been on several to see what it was about. We had we graduated. We took our year-long apprenticeship. Me and another couple and some other friends. We took a year-long apprenticeship, shamanic apprenticeship. And after we were ordained, we graduated. Then we had, okay, now what do we do now? And so in goes the next class. So so then my friends and I, we as a married couple, we said, well, I said, why don't we go try paranormal investigations? I mean, we've got all this information, knowledge, and we know, we see. And so we did. Co-founded Northwest Shaman Paranormal Investigators, and there's nobody like that out here. They call themselves that. And we did that for a while, about a year and a half or so, and then the things we changed. We changed, but most of it was, for me, it was, yeah, I'm going to investigate a place. Somebody would call and say, hey, like, there's a lot of activity here and we're being attacked and blah blah blah. So my thing was to go and help the people who were being psychically attacked and then find out what's going on, what's in there. So that the couple, they would go and they had all the equipment and whatever. I just had my cell phone and I had my drum and I didn't do nothing through the place.
can't beat a drum.
And so, and then we'd have sage. I'd do the sage and the whole bit, but I knew when there was something there. And I, because at the age of 13, I was seeing all kind of things and I didn't want to see it, and it was driving me crazy. I didn't understand it and I was getting scared, it's like I had no control. I was having out of body experiences. These entities were coming into my room and scaring the crap out of me. And I was afraid to go to sleep because then I'd end up in a half awake, half asleep state, paralyzed. But then that's when these things would be, touching me and messing with me. And I didn't like it, so it was not fun. So then one day I was just, I'd had enough. And there was all these things that I had no control over. And I was going to the libraries, I was researching all I could. And so I finally ended up calling out for Mother Mary, I need your help. Please make this stop. Please make it stop. I think I'm losing my mind. And as soon as I called her, because I used to call on God and I used to call on Jesus, and I never had a response. But when I called on the Blessed Mother, suddenly all that fear had stopped. And
Yeah,
then there was the scent of roses and this beautiful warmth that just blanketed me. And I thought, oh my God, there's such a person. There is Mother Mary. So to this day, I believe in her.
yeah, the
She,
Divine Mother. Yeah, totally, totally.
yes. I mean, then of course I discovered at the age of 13 Egypt and the gods and goddesses, and right away I knew I was there. I knew it. I just knew I had this affinity, especially with goddess Isis, Mother Isis.
Mhm.
And bossed another one. So those two made themselves known to me at that age, 13 and 14 years old. So, what is this? But I liked it because I knew I'd been there. I knew I was alive back in those days. And so that brought me into reincarnation and all these other things. But uh, yeah, so as far as the investigations, it was more curiosity because I already knew there were such things as, ghosts and spirits and things that go bump in the night because I'd already been experiencing it. So that was not my reason. It was more to help those who were being harassed. And we got called in for one in particular. My mother had contacted another paranormal group and said, "Hey, we hear that you guys can help with things that are happening to people. My son has been psychically attacked and this and that." So, yeah. So we went over and it was a mother. It was just her and her son. And the way she explained it was that there was something in the house that they moved to, and it was affecting her son. And he was like 13 at the time. I think it was 13. And so we went over there and we told him we talked to him too, but he was like, kind of nonchalant about it, whatever. But I could see it in his eyes that he wasn't all there. It wasn't just him. Yeah. So I said, okay, well, we're going to go walk around, and we've got our cameras and the handheld whatchamacallums and recorders. And so she stayed in the kitchen with her son, and she had another friend over there with her. So we were walking around, the three of us, and then shortly after, probably about a half hour, 40 minutes, she came over and she said, there's something going on with my son. Can you come over there? Oh, yeah. So we left my friend's husband to continue doing walking around, whatever. And so myself and my friend walked over to where he was in the kitchen, and his eyes were closed, and he was kind of like rocking between some. So she was really tripping. She was scared. So we called his name. He opened his eyes a little bit. We fluttered, and he looked at us, and I could feel the energy right off the top. It was prickly, and it wasn't him. And right away you feel that in your solar plexus.
Yeah.
That's my red flag. And so I'm thinking, okay. And he closed his eyes, and he started babbling something. And so we were calling out to him, calling for him to come back. And I was talking to this entity and telling him, you have no control over him, and you need to be gone. We're not welcome here. Leave this boy alone. Playing the drum, praying in his ear. The thing was trying to make me forget how to do the Lord's Prayer. So I said, So I kept telling him, I'd find my way back to finish the prayer and continue. So my friend was on one side and I was on the other side, and we were both in his ear. And you got to come back. I don't remember what it is. You got to come back now. You don't belong to this entity. And then screaming at the entity, not screaming, telling it, commanding it to get out in the name of Jesus, and call in Archangel Michael and so on. So finally he came back. His eyes started fluttering, and then he opened his eyes, and some of these kind of CCs are standing all around. Hey, what you doing? Are you okay? You changed, the whole energy changed. And he goes, yeah, I feel okay. I'm tired. I said, well, what happened? So we tried to get him to say, I don't know. I was fine. We were just sitting here. And then all of a sudden I felt really weird. And then it was not there. Said,
suffered the numbness. Yeah.
Suffer the what?
The numbness.
The numbness.
Numb. Yeah. Emptiness.
Mm-hmm. So, but that was my reason for getting into it. And you saw that one video that I did when I was being interviewed. But I don't believe in going into somebody's home and harassing whatever's going on in there. No, that's wrong. Because you get these people that go in there with their groups, and they think they're going to be all famous and make a ruckus like a certain person with a first initial Z. And
it's true, though, isn't it? It's just the way they are.
And I'm totally against that type of those attitudes that they go in and they're going to be rich, and they're going to make these spirits dance, talk, whatever. That's disrespectful first of all, to the spirits themselves, because they were humans at one time.
That's right. Yeah.
They might be mad because you're in there taunting them. Oh, show yourself and whatever, disrespectful. Then they leave. Here they've done all this rigmarole. They leave and they leave the family, and the family comes back to the house, and the activity's worse.
Yeah, it's
So
antagonising, isn't it?
yeah,
It's a
that's
media circus. Yeah, it's the same old thing, isn't it? The media again.
yeah. So I'm totally against that, and I have no respect for those kind of
No, I
people.
don't.
But
I don't. I think it's. I'm like you. My views are the same. I think it's very wrong. It's very disrespectful.
mm,
And in some cases, if you are dealing with something that's sort of malevolent entity, it's not going to take kindly to that kind of treatment.
no, you're gonna have a hitchhiker following you home or taunting you or whatever. So yeah, so I've seen some things, but I deal a lot with the spiritual. mm, I've done psychic intervention, especially for my brother, because he was schizophrenic. That happened to him at the age of 19, and he had a psychotic break. Um, and he was remanded to Camarillo State Hospital in California, which is a well-known hospital for being haunted because they did some messed up experiments there. And my brother, they'd given him, you don't know how many shock treatments, and they had him on those heavy-duty tranquilizers, and they called it the Thorazine shuffles, and the people are just walking zombies. They're not there. So he was there for about a year and a half, and when he came out, he was worse than anyone. He was on acid because I remember finding a sugar cube on his dresser then I was 13, and that was during the 60s. It was 1963. So my brother was like, he was like a senior in high school at that age, at that year, and I saw that sugar cube, and I went and picked it up. I thought, hey, because I loved sugar. I was a candy fiend, and I was about to pop it in my mouth, and then I heard distinctly, "No, put that down." I said, "Okay, okay," and I put it back down. And then about 3 days later, 2 days later, the sugar cube was not there anymore on the dresser. I thought, oh, maybe what happened? Where'd it go? Whatever. And then another 2 days went by, and then I was in the living room with my parents watching a corny TV show or whatever back in those days. And then suddenly we see the figure go by the window, or the front window that faces the front yard. And in bursts my brother and shuts the door behind him, and he's leaning against the door. We're looking at him, and he looks panicked, and he's breathing hard. Apparently he'd been running down the street, and he was saying something about, we're going, "What's the matter? What's wrong with you?" He's going, they're chasing me, they're after me. And then my parents are trying to, what are you talking about? The cops. And then he said something about the Nazis, and I'm like, oh shit. Oh, oops. And so my parents said, "Cat, go to your room. Go on right now." But oh, he's fine. Don't worry. Go to your room. Okay. So they scooted me away, and I'm thinking, what was that about? I didn't know. So, and it was probably the day or two after that that happening. Um, my brother wasn't there. I came home from school and said, "Where's my brother? Where's Ray?" Oh, and then my mom started to explain. Oh, we had to take him to the hospital because he's not well and whatever. So I didn't understand that until much later, because when he came back, he had this attachment, and he was no longer my brother. So that was with him for the rest of his life, and I had dealt with that, and I came to understand that there was more to these ghosts, spirits, and whatever. There are such
Totally.
things,
Yeah, totally.
demonics and whatever. So, uh, yeah. So I was his caregiver and my mom's too from 2003 until she died in 2009, and then my brother died on his birthday, 2018. So yeah, he was here with us. He made it up the road to Oregon, but he got real sick. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I think we spoke, didn't we, briefly when he was ill.
Yeah, in his last days. But the thing, I had so many confrontations with that thing after mom, she passed, and when we moved here, and I wasn't afraid of it because I knew what it was, and I knew I was stronger than that, and I wouldn't I wouldn't allow any fear to rise because I knew what would happen if I allowed that in. And I'm not. So I'd have these confrontations with this thing. There were some creepy times, but in the long run, I it knew it knew that I knew it was in there, and it used my brother to attack me verbally, emotionally, psychically. Um, yeah, so that was quite the experience, and I learned a lot. So that's part of that'll be a podcast that I'll be talking to people about attachments. People that don't know what they're doing and they go on these uh, paranormal investigations and they're going all, oh, we're gonna have so much fun, we're gonna find, and if they don't know how to protect themselves, they're walking in vulnerable as a baby lamb.
Oh,
Doing
God, yeah.
this, you
It's
know.
like, yeah, you're a lamb to the slaughter with that sort of stuff.
Yes. So
I
yeah.
remember just a quick one before we part company. I remember I went to my family would come from West London, like around Richmond area, and I was studying John Dee, and it's like John Dee had a house in Mortlake, which is like a couple of miles from Richmond. So I go find this place. So anyway, I'm hunting around, and it's like it should be here, but there's this big gap with a lawn, right? And it's like a thing stuck in the wrong. This was the site of the cotton mill in so and so, whatever, the cotton factory. So anyway, I see the vicar, the local vicar walking along. So I go running over. Excuse me, vicar. He said, yes. I said, any idea where John Dee's house is? So, because there's a connection to the church with John Dee.
Okay.
The church is opposite St Mary's Church. So he said, yeah, it's right there where that lawn is. So I'm like, oh, right. And he's like, why? He said, you got an interest in John Dee? I said, yeah. He said, oh, if you come with me, he said, we've actually got a John Dee Appreciation Society, or what it was, Preservation Society, we run from the church. So it's like, okay, cool. This is Queen Elizabeth's the first royal astrology.
Oh.
We're getting somewhere. So it takes me in the church. I'm thinking, this is a bit strange. This dude's like really open to the occult for a vicar, right? So he
Okay.
gives me this booklet, and he's like, well, he said, it's very quiet here today. He said, normally we have a lot more people pass through. Remember, it's pouring down with rain and crap here. He said, due to the weather. And I'm like, well, I said, he's buried in here, though, isn't he? Like, is he buried in the church? Actually, inside the church. So he said, yeah. So I thought, I'm going to take my chances. He seems all right. He's on the level. I said to him, look, I hope you don't mind. I said, but I said, I'm a strong follower of the occult. I said, and I've actually studied necromancy. I said, properly. He said, oh, yeah. He said, John Dee, he said, had his dealings with necromancy and, summons in angels and spirits and stuff. And I'm like, yeah. He said, I said, any chance? I said, you could show me where his grave is. So he said, I can do better than that. He said, come with me. So he took me down the front of the church. And there's like an altar roped off. And he said, look, he says, the best I can do. He said, you can cross the barrier. I don't mind. He said, but his bones are actually under there. He said, so that's about as close as I can get you. He said, but you're welcome. He said, we don't normally do it. He said, but I will allow it. He said, you're welcome to go up to the altar and pay your respects. He said, he was a great man, I said, thank you. I swear, Cat, I stepped over this rope barrier because he was heavily into angelic magic.
Okay.
And wow, you can feel his bones throbbing under your feet. And it's like you're stood in this mental angelic presence. As soon as you get near that grave,
wow,
you're in it, and you can feel yourself stepping in it, stepping out of it, stepping in it.
Oh, wow. That's
my girlfriend at the time was brilliant. She was a Siberian shamanka, and she's like, She used to call me wizard. She's like, wizard, what are you doing? I'm going, there's just some weird shit here. She's like, what? I said, if you step there, I said, it's like being in another world. I said, and when you step out, it's like being back in the church. I said, but step up again. She went, is that what you're doing? I said, yeah. And it was really funny, out of respect, because the vicar didn't invite her to cross that barrier, she wouldn't cross it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was bizarre.
Okay. Why do you suppose she wouldn't cry? Because she already knew, or
She
what?
knew it. I think she could feel it anyway. She was very sensitive like that. But I think she knew that it was kind of hallowed ground. You know, this was like a magician paying respect to another magician kind of thing. And she didn't. I think she felt it was kind of sounds horrible. Man's business. It's like something between two men. You know, like in a tribe where they have men's business and women's business and mixed business and all that. But I really felt more than anything, it was a matter of she knew I was paying my respects, and it was like, well, I don't want to seem like I'm intruding. But honestly, Kat, it was like you go into this white cone of angelic power.
Wow.
And it's like white flecked with gold.
Really? And
then when I went back across and stood on the lawn where his house used to be, man, you feel exactly the same thing.
Oh, he was something else. John D.
Dr. John D. Yeah. He's around in the Elizabethan age, which I believe it was around 1500s, 1600s. Real interesting character.
1500s to 1600s.
I'd like to see someone do an investigation there in the church and at his house just to see what's there.
Wow. Well, with that kind of angelic energy, I wouldn't mind trying that.
Oh man, honestly, it is so noticeable, Kat. It's like, you know, I don't. Wow. And prior to that, I wasn't a great believer in like angelic frequencies and all of that. And I stood there, and it's like I've just had my blinkers torn off. You know, whatever this is, it is light, it is bright. It felt very solar, like a solar energy, but mixed with something far higher. You know.
Okay.
Very I describe it very kind of, I say godlike, but it wasn't. It felt very feminine.
Well, yeah, the divine feminine. The divine feminine.
But awesome vibe. Absolutely awesome.
Wow. I'd love
and I said to this vicar, I said, hey, look, you know, thank you so much. And this guy, he was unreal. He's like, hey, you're so welcome. He said, you know, we've all got our beliefs. He said, I'm a man of God. He was a man of God. He said, I'm sure in your own way, you're a man of God. You know, he said, this is life. This is what we do. And I couldn't believe it. I've never met a vicar like it. Never met a priest like that way.
He was wise beyond his years. Beyond his
and he
title.
said to me, he said, well, I said, how come you got such an open view? And he said, I have to live with the man.
That's good. Well, see, that was very respectful, and so he was respectful.
Yeah, very. That's cool. It cut both ways, you know. It changed my opinion about the church as well. It's like, you know, it's not all of them are fire and brimstone, you know.
What religion was that? Episcopalian or Protestant or I don't know, Catholic?
That's a Protestant church, I think.
Okay.
I'm sure it is.
Wow. I'm about to look this guy up, John.
I can't remember. It's St. Mary's Church, Mortlake. I'm sure it was. No, St. Mary. It must be Catholic. It's probably a Catholic church.
Orthodox.
Yeah, it would be like I guess the same stuff you had around in John Dee's time, because they were like that, weren't they? But I know the house there got ransacked by an angry mob as being a heretic. And his house got stormed, and the library, I believe the library in the house got burnt for his work. But yeah, there was him and another guy that worked with him, a guy called Edward Kelly.
That sounds familiar.
The necromancer, and he kind of convinced he tried to convince Dee to do these necromancy and wife swapping and stuff like that. Kelly was a bit more of a. They think he was actually a bit of a charlatan.
Edward Kelly, you said?
So it was Edward Kelly, yeah.
Huh.
But if you find
Uh,
John D, you'll find Kelly. His surname was definitely Kelly. I'm sure it was Epping. Pretty sure it was Epping.
and what place, what area was this with John D?
This is a place called Mortlake, Mortlake.
MORT.
It comes from
L
French. More is death in French. It means death lake.
Oh, so that's the name of the area. Like,
Yeah, Mortlake. And weirdly enough, my grandfather was the gravedigger at Mortlake Cemetery, which is, and there's the connection from my dad's side of the family to the occult. You know, it's like weird stuff. All these little
that's
weird things that join the dots. You know.
yeah, that's cool though. That's really cool. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. You had a lot of cool experiences and a lot of history. Tons. And I'm sure you're a walking Britannica, and whatever you want to
No,
say.
not really. I like to say I still know nothing. You know.
But you know a lot. I mean, I was
I
learning.
think we all do, Kat. I think people like
Yeah,
me and you, we learn from our experiences. Our experiences are our teacher, and I think
definitely,
that's the best way of learning. I find.
definitely. And you have to have an open mind. I mean, you can't be walking around with rose-colored glasses or whatever, because life is not that way. People are not that way, and otherwise something's gonna. You could have a dark night of the soul, and then you're blown away because suddenly, oh wow, there's whatever that
Yeah,
they thought was not real, and suddenly they see it themselves, or whatever the case may be. You have to be open-minded so that I always thought, and I always said to myself, learn to expect the unexpected, so then you cannot be surprised.
yeah, totally, totally.
So yeah. Well, all right then, Mr. Glenn.
Thank you,
That
Kat. It's been
thank
a
you.
pleasure, absolute
Yeah, that
pleasure.
has been. That was fun. And then I'm gonna have to rewatch this and take notes because you got a lot of info coming at me.
Yeah, by all means. I mean, obviously, edit out anything that you feel is me waffling by all means, because it's at the end of the day, I'd rather be entertaining from people than boring.
Nah, I wouldn't say that there was any more boring information in there at all. So I'm gonna be. This is gonna be public if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. So, and as soon as it's finished processing, then I'll send you the link and so on. So
Lovely.
awesome. All right, thank you so much.
All right,
Have a
Kat. Lovely to
have
see
a
you.
blessed day, guy.
And you.
Thank you. Bye bye for
Namaste.
now. Namaste.
See you soon.